I remember the day distinctly, the way the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across our living room. It was a Saturday, the kind of day that usually promised adventure, but instead it became the day my life shattered. I had come home early from work, eager to surprise my wife, Jenna, with a spontaneous outing to the theme park where we had spent countless weekends together. The laughter, the thrill of rides, and the sweet scent of funnel cakes filled my memories. But that day, as I walked through the door, I was met with an emptiness that felt heavier than any weight I had ever borne. Jenna was supposed to be home. I had texted her earlier, but there was no reply. I thought nothing of it at first. She often lost track of time while running errands. But as the minutes turned into an hour, a pit began to form in my stomach. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it clung to me like a shadow. I paced the living room, glancing at the clock and then at my phone. I dialed her number, but it went straight to voicemail. After what felt like an eternity, I decided to check her social media. I was hesitant, but curiosity got the better of me. As I scrolled through her posts, my heart sank. There it was, a photo of her laughing and smiling beside a man in a theme park uniform, a ride operator named Kyle. They were standing in front of a roller coaster, his arm casually draped around her shoulder. The caption read, "Best day ever with my favorite ride buddy." My heart raced as I stared at the screen, disbelief washing over me. This couldn't be real. Jenna would never betray me like this. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone against the wall, but I found myself frozen, trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal coursed through my veins. I had always trusted her implicitly, never once doubting her loyalty. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath to steady myself, but it was futile. The image of her with Kyle replayed in my mind like a broken record. I felt sick. It was as if I had been punched in the gut. The love I had for her twisted into something sharp and painful. I opened my eyes, the reality crashing down on me like a tidal wave. I needed to confront her, to demand answers. But how could I do that without sounding like a jealous fool? I spent the next hour packing the house, replaying every moment in our marriage, trying to find the signs I had missed. Had she been distant? Had I been blind to her changes? I thought back to our last visit to the theme park, the way she had laughed a little too loudly, the way her eyes sparkled with excitement. Had she been thinking of him then? The door creaked open and I turned to see Jenna walk in, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Hey, honey, I didn't expect you home so soon." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I could see it now, the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided meeting my gaze. "Jenna, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. She paused, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. "I saw the photo with Kyle." Her expression shifted, the color draining from her face. In that moment, I realized I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and I had no idea how far I would fall. The confrontation had left me feeling raw and exposed, like a wound that had just been opened. Jenna's reaction was everything I had feared and more. She stammered, searching for words, but I was already lost in my thoughts, my mind racing as I replayed the moment over and over. I needed answers, and the only way to get them was to dig deeper. The next day, I decided to take a different approach. I couldn't confront her again without solid proof, so I became a detective in my own life, my heart heavy with the burden of betrayal. I started by observing her behavior. I noted the little things, a change in her routine, her late nights, and the way she would often glance at her phone, a nervousness creeping into her demeanor that hadn't been there before. I began to follow her. It was uncomfortable and filled me with guilt, but I had to know the truth. I parked my car a few blocks from the theme park, watching as she pulled into the lot, her usual smile replaced by a look of anticipation that made my stomach churn. I felt like a voyeur in my own marriage, but I couldn't help myself. I had to see if she would meet Kyle. As I watched, I saw her walk toward the entrance, her excitement palpable. I followed her inside, keeping a safe distance. The park was bustling with families, children laughing, and the scent of popcorn and cotton candy wafting through the air. I felt like an intruder in this happy place. My heart felt heavy with the weight of my suspicions. I found a spot near the Ferris wheel, a vantage point where I could see everything. My eyes darted around, searching for Jenna. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted her. She was standing in line for a ride, and to my horror, Kyle appeared beside her. He was laughing, his hand brushing against her arm, and she leaned into him, her laughter ringing out like a siren call. I felt the heat of jealousy rise within me, threatening to consume me whole. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed proof, something concrete to confront her with. I discreetly took out my phone and began recording. My hands shook as I captured their interactions, the way she looked at him, the way they shared secrets and laughter. Each moment felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my heart. After what seemed like hours, they finally approached the ride. I watched as they climbed into the same car, her eyes bright with excitement, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. The ride started and I continued to film, unable to tear my eyes away. I felt like I was witnessing something sacred being desecrated. When they got off, I finally decided it was time to leave. I had enough evidence to confront her, but I needed to plan my next move carefully. I drove home in a daze, my thoughts racing. I couldn't shake the image of her smiling with Kyle from my mind. How could she do this to us? Over the next few days, I continued my investigation. I reached out to a few friends who worked at the park, asking innocuous questions about Kyle. I learned that he was a part-time ride operator who had been working there for a few years. He was charming and well-liked, which only fueled my anger. I could picture him, smooth-talking and charming, the type of guy who could sweep someone like Jenna off her feet. With every passing day, my obsession grew. I spent hours on social media, searching for any mention of them together. I even set up a fake account to follow Jenna and Kyle's online interactions. It was sickening, but I felt powerless to stop myself. I was drowning in a sea of jealousy and betrayal, and the only thing I could do was gather evidence. I began to piece together their meetings, how often they saw each other when they would text, and how she would often come home late with a ready excuse. Each piece of information felt like a small victory, but the reality was that it was tearing me apart. I started losing sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. I knew I had to confront Jenna, but I wanted to wait until I had everything in place. I needed to expose her, not just for my sake, but for the sake of our marriage. I couldn't let her get away with this betrayal without facing consequences. As I sat alone in my darkened living room, I felt a sense of resolve wash over me. I would make sure Jenna understood the gravity of her actions. This was more than just an affair. It was a betrayal of everything we had built together. The night finally arrived. I had gathered enough evidence to confront Jenna about her affair with Kyle. My heart raced as I prepared myself, the anticipation hanging heavy in the air. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind countless times, but nothing could prepare me for the reality of what was about to unfold. I wanted answers, and I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal. As the clock struck 8, I heard the familiar sound of the front door opening. Jenna walked in, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Hey, honey, you're home early again," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. I forced a smile, but inside I was a storm of emotions. "Jenna, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but cold. The warmth in her smile faded as she sensed the gravity of my tone. "Is everything okay?" she, her brow furrowing with concern. "No, everything is not okay." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "I saw the photo of you and Kyle at the theme park, you know, the one I'm talking about." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I could see the panic flicker across her face. "What are you talking about? Don't play coy with me, Jenna. I know about your affair," I said, my voice rising slightly, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "I've seen you with him. I've seen how you look at him." "How long has this been going on?" She opened her mouth to respond, but the words seemed to get stuck in her throat. I watched as her eyes darted around the room, searching for a way out of this conversation. "It's not what you think," she finally managed to say, her voice trembling. "Not what I think," I echoed incredulously. "You're laughing and flirting with a ride operator. How can you possibly justify that? You've betrayed me, Jenna." Her face flushed, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. "I never meant for it to happen. It was just a stupid fling, and I thought it was over." "A fling?" I scoffed, the bitterness tangling in my throat. You thought I wouldn't find out. You thought this would just go away. You've put everything we've built on the line for a fling. Please let me explain." She pleaded, her voice rising with desperation. "Explain what? How you fell for a guy who operates a roller coaster. How you chose him over our life together." I stepped closer, feeling the heat of my anger radiate off me. "You've made a fool of me, Jenna." She looked down, her shoulders shaking as she fought back tears. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was just feeling lost, and he made me feel alive again." Alive? I spat, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. What about the life we built together? What about the love we shared? You threw it all away for a thrill ride. I could see her emotions shifting, guilt washing over her features. I made a mistake. I thought it was just fun. I didn't think it would mean anything. Didn't think it would mean anything. I repeated, incredulity washing over me. "You're telling me that your feelings for him were just a joke. You think I'm going to let you walk away from this without facing the consequences?" Her eyes widened as she took a step back. "What do you mean by that?" I took a deep breath, feeling a cold sense of determination settle in. "You're going to face the truth, Jenna. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done. You'll understand the depth of your betrayal. You won't be able to hide from this." "No, please, you can't do that," she cried, her voice breaking. "It was a mistake. I'll do anything to make it right." "Anything?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "What could you possibly do to fix this? You've shattered my trust, and for what? A momentary thrill." Jenna's face crumpled as she sank down onto the couch, her sobs echoing in the stillness of the room. I felt a mix of triumph and sadness wash over me. I had finally confronted her, but the reality of the situation felt heavier than I had anticipated. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," I said quietly, the anger beginning to ebb away, replaced by a profound sense of loss. "But I will make sure you understand just how deeply you've hurt me." As she sat there, tears streaming down her face, I realized that this was only the beginning. I had a plan, and I was going to see it through. I would expose her, and in doing so, I hoped to reclaim not just my dignity but my sense of self. The days that followed the confrontation were a blur of anger and determination. I felt like a man possessed, my mind consumed by thoughts of revenge. I had been wronged, and I was going to make sure Jenna faced the consequences of her actions. It wasn't just about punishing her. It was about reclaiming my dignity and ensuring that she understood the depth of her betrayal. I spent hours plotting my next steps, each idea more devious than the last. I had already recorded evidence of her infidelity, but I needed more. I wanted to expose her in a way that would resonate, a way that would ensure she would never enjoy the theme park again, the very place where her affair had blossomed. I started by reaching out to a few acquaintances who worked at the park. I crafted a narrative that painted me as a concerned husband, someone who had stumbled upon alarming information about one of their employees. I learned that Kyle had been working as a ride operator for a few years, and his reputation was generally solid among the staff. But I also discovered that he had a few run-ins with management regarding inappropriate behavior. This was my opening. I decided to gather more evidence about their interactions at the park. I returned to my surveillance mode, lurking in the shadows, capturing every moment I could. I watched as Jenna and Kyle met at the park on weekends, their laughter ringing through the air. I recorded them sharing intimate moments, his arm around her, her head thrown back in laughter, the way they would steal kisses when they thought no one was watching. Each moment I captured felt like a dagger, but it also fueled my resolve. One afternoon, as I sat hidden behind a concession stand, I overheard Kyle talking to a couple of coworkers. They were discussing their weekend plans, and I learned that there was a company meeting scheduled for the upcoming Friday. It was the perfect opportunity for me to strike. I spent the next few days preparing myself, gathering all the evidence I had collected. I compiled photos, recordings, and even snippets of text messages I had intercepted from Jenna's phone. I had created a damning dossier that would expose her affair in front of the entire theme park community. Friday arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves as I made my way to the park. I had arranged to meet with one of the park managers, presenting myself as a concerned husband who had evidence of inappropriate behavior by one of their employees. I wore a mask of calm, but inside, I was a storm of emotions, ready to unleash my revenge. As I entered the manager's office, I was greeted by a middle-aged man named Steve. He was amiable but had an air of authority that made me feel both anxious and empowered. I introduced myself, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Thank you for meeting with me," I said, trying to keep my expression neutral. "I have some serious concerns about one of your employees, Kyle." Steve's expression shifted and I could see his curiosity piqued. "What kind of concerns?" I took a deep breath, pulling out my phone and showing him the recordings. As I played the clips, I watched his face change, disbelief morphing into concern as he absorbed the evidence of Jenna's infidelity. I could see the gears turning in his mind, and it felt like a victory already. "This is serious," Steve said, his voice low. "If this is true, we have protocols to follow. We can't allow this kind of behavior in our park." I nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over me. "I understand, but I think it's important for you to know that this isn't just about Kyle. It's about my wife and her actions. She's been unfaithful, and I want to make sure she understands the consequences of her choices." Steve's eyes narrowed as he processed what I was saying. "You're saying your wife is involved with one of our employees?" "Yes," I replied, my voice steady, "and I want to ensure that this doesn't get swept under the rug. I want her to face the truth of her actions, and I want Kyle held accountable as well." He leaned back in his chair, contemplating my words. "I'll need to investigate this further. We take these matters seriously, and if what you're saying is true, there will be consequences for both of them." "Thank you," I said, a sense of triumph swelling within me. I had planted the seed, and now it was time to let it grow. As I left the office, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I had set my plan in motion, and there was no turning back. I couldn't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and sadness. I was exposing Jenna, but in doing so, I was also destroying the last remnants of our marriage. The following week, I learned from my contacts that both Jenna and Kyle were called into a meeting with management. I could only imagine the panic that ensued as they faced the consequences of their actions. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, knowing that I had orchestrated this moment. But as the days passed, the euphoria began to fade, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. I had achieved my revenge, but at what cost? The realization that I was tearing apart not just Jenna's life, but my own as well, weighed heavily on my conscience. I had become the villain in my own story, and the darkness that surrounded me threatened to consume everything I once held dear. The fallout from my actions hit me harder than I had anticipated. I had set out to expose Jenna, to make her understand the depths of her betrayal, but I had not prepared myself for the emotional chaos that would follow. The day after the meeting with management, I received a phone call from Jenna. Her voice was shaky, filled with a mix of anger and despair. "Why, David? Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You didn't have to ruin everything." I felt a pang of guilt, but I quickly pushed it aside. "You ruined everything the moment you chose to betray me, Jenna. You made your choice, and now you have to face the consequences." "I never meant to hurt you," she pleaded, her tone desperate. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I thought we could work through it." "Work through it?" I shot back, my anger flaring again. "You think I can just forget what you did? You think I can pretend like this never happened? Please, just let's talk about this in person," she begged. "I need you to understand how sorry I am." "No, Jenna, I don't think I can do that," I said, my voice firm. "You've broken my trust, and I don't know if I can ever get it back." As the call ended, I felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. I had succeeded in my plan, but at the cost of losing the woman I loved. I had exposed her in a way that would leave scars, both on her and on me. The reality of my actions began to sink in. I had transformed from a hurt husband seeking justice to a man who had willingly inflicted pain on someone I once cherished. In the days that followed, I learned that Jenna had been suspended from the theme park pending an investigation. Kyle had been let go immediately, his reputation tarnished and his future uncertain. I heard whispers from my contacts that Jenna was devastated, struggling to cope with the fallout. I felt a strange sense of emptiness wash over me. I had taken away her livelihood, her happiness, and in doing so, I had taken away a part of myself. I started to see the repercussions of my actions ripple through my own life. Friends began to distance themselves, unsure of how to navigate this situation. My once vibrant social life dwindled to nothing, and I found myself isolated in my own home. The laughter and joy that used to fill our space were replaced by a heavy silence. On one particularly bleak evening, I sat alone on the couch, scrolling through old photos of Jenna and me. I came across a picture from our last trip to the theme park, her face lit up with joy as she rode the Ferris wheel. I remembered how we had shared cotton candy, how we had laughed until our sides hurt. That memory felt like a ghost haunting me, a reminder of what we had lost. I began to question my motives. Had I truly sought justice, or had I simply wanted to hurt her as she had hurt me? I had acted out of anger, and now I was left with a hollow victory that felt more like a defeat. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line, becoming the very thing I despised. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself spiraling into a dark place. I didn't want to face anyone, least of all Jenna. I avoided her calls and texts, grappling with the guilt that gnawed at me relentlessly. I had made my choice, but the consequences of that choice were heavier than I had imagined. One evening, as I sat in the dim light of my living room, I received a message from Jenna. It was a simple text, but it cut deep. "I miss you." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I had wanted her to feel the pain of betrayal, but now I was the one suffering. I realized that I couldn't continue down this path. I needed to confront my own feelings, to face the reality of what I had done. I decided to meet with her, not to reconcile, but to find closure for both of us. When I arrived at her apartment, the tension was palpable. Jenna opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She looked fragile, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the love I once had for her. "David," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think you'd come." "I needed to talk," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging heavy in the air. "I'm sorry," she finally said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I never meant for it to go this far. I was lost and I didn't know how to fix it. I thought I could have a little fun and it wouldn't matter." "Jenna, it did matter," I said, my voice firm but compassionate. "You hurt me and you hurt yourself. What you did was unforgivable, but I'm not here to punish you anymore. I just want to understand why you made those choices." She looked down, her expression filled with regret. "I thought I was unhappy, but I realize now that I was just scared. I didn't know how to communicate with you." Instead of talking, I ran away. The vulnerability in her voice struck a chord within me, and I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crumble. "I wish you had come to me. We could have worked through it together," I said, my voice softening. "I know," she murmured, her gaze meeting mine. "I wish I could take it all back. I miss us, David. I miss the love we had." As we talked, I felt a sense of catharsis wash over me. While I couldn't forgive her just yet, I realized that I didn't want to carry the weight of this anger any longer. We were both broken, and the only way to heal was to let go of the pain we had inflicted on each other. "Maybe we can start over," I suggested cautiously. "Not as a couple, but as friends. We both need to heal." "Friends," she echoed, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Yes," I confirmed. "It's a long road ahead, but I don't want us to be enemies. We've shared too much to let it all go to waste." As we parted that evening, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had taken the first step towards healing, not just for Jenna, but for myself as well. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but it was a path I was willing to walk. In the weeks that followed our conversation, Jenna and I began to navigate the treacherous waters of our new relationship. We weren't a couple anymore, but there was a tentative friendship budding between us, built on honesty and a shared desire to heal. It was strange and awkward at first, but slowly we found a rhythm. We would meet for coffee, talk about our lives, and reflect on the mistakes we had made. I learned that Jenna was taking steps to rebuild her life. She had enrolled in counseling, determined to understand her choices and figure out her own happiness. It was a hard journey for her, but I admired her courage. She was facing the consequences of her actions head-on, and I found myself feeling proud of her resilience. I too had started therapy. I knew I needed to unpack my own feelings, to understand why I had let anger and revenge consume me. My Therapist helped me see that while I had every right to be hurt, I had also lost sight of the love we once shared. Revenge had felt powerful, but it had ultimately left me hollow. As we continued to meet, I noticed changes in myself. I was learning to forgive, not just Jenna, but also myself. I had acted out of pain and fear, and while my actions had consequences, they didn't have to define who I was. I began to focus on rebuilding my life, rediscovering my passions, and reconnecting with friends I had pushed away during my darker days. One day, Jenna suggested we visit the theme park again. My heart raced at the thought. It was a place filled with memories, both joyful and painful, but I realized that facing it together could be a significant step forward. It would be a way to reclaim the happiness that had once been ours, without the shadows of betrayal looming over us. When we arrived, the park buzzed with life. Children were laughing, families were enjoying themselves, and the air was filled with the delicious scent of popcorn and cotton candy. As we walked through the entrance, I felt a mix of anxiety and nostalgia. Would this place still hold the same magic for us? We made our way to the Ferris wheel, the very ride where we had shared countless moments of joy. As we climbed into the car, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. I glanced at Jenna, and for the first time in a long time I saw hope in her eyes. As the wheel began to turn, we rose higher and higher, the park sprawling beneath us. I could see the roller coasters twisting and turning, the laughter of children ringing out like music. In that moment I realized that while our past was marred by pain, we had the power to shape our future. "Look at how beautiful it is," Jenna said, her voice filled with awe. "It really is," I replied, a smile creeping onto my face. As we reached the top, the view was breathtaking. I could see the entire park, filled with life and laughter. I turned to Jenna, and in that moment I felt a sense of peace wash over me. "I'm glad we came here," I said, my voice steady. "It feels like a fresh start." "Me too," she replied, her eyes glistening. "Thank you for giving me this chance." As we descended, I realized that while the scars of our past would always be there, they didn't have to dictate our future. We were both learning and growing, and perhaps, in time, we could find a way to rebuild what we had lost. In the days that followed, we continued to meet and support each other. I watched as Jenna grew stronger, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose in my own life. We both learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's also about facing the hard truths and choosing to move forward, together or apart. As I reflected on everything that had transpired, I understood the complexity of relationships. Betrayal can cut deep, but it can also lead to profound growth and healing if we allow it. I had learned that revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, but true strength lies in forgiveness and understanding. Our journey was far from over, but I felt hopeful. We were both on the path to healing, and while the road ahead would have its challenges, I believed we could navigate it with honesty and compassion. In the end, I discovered that love, trust, and betrayal are intertwined in a dance that can lead to either destruction or rebirth. I chose to embrace the possibility of renewal, knowing that while the past could not be changed, the future was ours to create. And with that realization, I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next.